And this is James Moore. You are listening to solar-powered KRUU-FM, Siesta Ocha time. That means it must be time to learn all about what's happening at City Hall. So you've made it to City Business with Michael Halley, 4th Ward council person. This is James Moore, solar-powered KRUU-FM. Also, we have in the house the one and only Jason, as they say in the business, FMC, the Fairfield Media Center. And that's you can watch radio in 3D or something like that. I don't know if I recommend it. I do because of Fairfield Media Center, but I like to think of radio as imagination. But speaking of good looking and sitting across from me, Michael Halley, you look like $1,000,000. It's a beautiful day. How are things going?
Things are good. I like the French pronunciation of Jason's name there. It was
Jason. I don't know where that... Oh, because Alan Toussaint passed away today.
Oh, there it is.
And some call him Toussaint, which is the way it's spelled. But somehow, maybe I got my quarter of my blood inspired. But City Business.
Well, yep.
You want to get her started?
Well, this is an informal review of our November 9th regular City Council meeting. But before we start, the election results are in.
Yep.
So what we have... Let's see. Mayor Malloy got reelected for his
handily
saying his final 2-year term. Mm-hmm. So that'll start beginning of 2016. And Katie Anderson won the at-large seat, which again, all these seats will begin after the new year. So
after the new year, and it was actually that was a close one.
Yeah, that was within
closer.
Well, with about 1,100 total votes, within and a difference 50. Of about 50.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good race on that part.
And then, of course...
And then re-election of Darren Hamilton and Martha Rasmussen. And then Tom Thompson returning to the council.
Oh.
He'd been on before for a couple terms, running unopposed for Ward 3, I think.
And then the
Measure A passed 2-1,
right.
Which seems to be... That's the third time that's happened. Mm-hmm. The pool gym passed 2-1, and the buying of the convention center building passed 2-1. So that will... enable the city to shore up our cash reserves more rapidly without needing to cut expenditures, which means cutting services.
Great.
So that's, I believe, a positive for the city.
And congratulations to everybody that got out. It wasn't, I wouldn't call it an overwhelming turnout, but I guess these off years are
about
often
22% of registered voters. Yeah. And when it's just local, that's about 20%.
Is that average?
Is average.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's great that people do come out and cast their ballots. All righty. We didn't have any public appearances this time. We had all sorts of action items and resolutions. A couple of tax abatements, which we just pass along to the assessor's office just to review that the council has, or the city has an abatement program, but we don't set the amount. It's based on the difference between the assessment before the improvements and after.
Okay.
So we just basically pass that along through to the assessor's office. We got another taker on the facade improvement of the downtown.
Oh, okay.
This is the, I think it's ERA Real Estate.
Is that number 9 then?
8, I think.
8, okay.
I think it's 8. There may be one more coming. So to get that final building might slow down the process a little bit, but it's worth trying to get one more if we can. Alrighty, we're moving forward on Kirkwood Avenue project. Kirkwood, D Street as in dog, and Fillmore are considered federal thoroughfares, and federal funds pay for repairs to those streets.
Okay.
So this is the final 2 blocks of Kirkwood to be repaired using these funds. It's between 7th and 9th Street. So the old street will be torn out next year, and then a new, slightly wider street will be put in.
Does that mean single lane traffic at one stretch there?
Probably just closed until it's completely done. Yeah. The way that roads are paved these days, there's a form that stretches from curb to curb.
Right.
And they, for lack of a more technical term, they glob the wet concrete in the road, and then they press it, and it actually forms the street and the curb in one.
I see. One swoop.
Mm-hmm. Glob, that's a technical term.
Glob and swoop. I mean, obviously, we are construction people. Yep. Right, Jason?
Jason. All right.
May we.
All right.
May we continue.
Yes. Very good. Remember I talked about setting the low to moderate income housing and rental prices as part of that TIF package. So we did that.
Okay.
And I have those numbers, I think. Where are they? When you need them. Here they go. All right. So again, this sounds high for low to moderate. It really is because it's new construction. It's more to the higher end of moderate. But what this allows is that if the project fits these criteria, then there are at least some moderately priced rentals or properties for sale, including in new housing projects that take advantage of this policy the city created. And the city then uses a portion of the captured increment from the urban renewal district for specifically low to moderate income projects. At this point, that really includes Habitat for Humanity type. I mean, there's no other one. Anybody who does it like them, but they would fit that.
Right.
So low to moderate rental prices for a studio, and these are max. 700, 1 bedroom 750, 2 bedroom 900, 3 bedroom 1,000, and 4 bedroom 1,100. And the LMI sale for home price studio 95,000, 1 bedroom 112,000, 2 bedroom 127,500, 3 bedroom 136,000, and 4 bedroom 145,000. Again, that doesn't sound like low to moderate income because those are brand new homes. So it's definitely going to be a little higher than, say, the house I bought, for example, was 3 bedroom and nowhere near that price. Right. It's 100 years old. So, so we set that so that there's already, I think it comes up a little later, we approved the final plat for North Campus Village.
Okay. We talked about that.
Yeah, their final expansion, their final space that they have to build. And so it will include some low to moderate income and some multifamily. So that's it's great that a developer, he said, he came to council last night, he wouldn't be doing it if the city weren't offering the policy that we put in place. That, again, it doesn't cost the city a dime, but we are allowing the developer to help cover some infrastructure costs with the new property tax increment created by the project. So that's moving forward. Actually, that was the next thing, the final approval for MUM. But a neighbor who owns property just north of North Campus Village, or at least this area where this is going to be built. And he's said it's farmland. It's been in his family for over 50 years. It's currently in the conservation program, but it's going to come out in a few years, and he does intend to farm it again. And he really just wants to make sure the developer makes that clear to anybody who decides to buy, that they do live next door to a conventional farm that will be sprayed and tilled, and that there will be noise and all that kind of thing.
And glyphosates. Yeah,
so he just didn't want it to be, he just wanted to make that explicitly clear. And I thought, well, that's fair.
Yeah, that's neighborly.
Yeah, and then he also wanted to make sure that during the construction that the soil didn't run off into his field, because there was a wildfire. Well, it was human caused, but then it burned all that land, and it burned the intakes for the drainage, and so they replaced them all. He really doesn't want to have to replace them again if the sediment from the construction comes and fills them up. And again, that's standard in construction, that they put up a silt fence or something it's actually valuable. The topsoil is valuable. A lot of times they scrape it, set it aside, build, and then bring it back to grow the lawn. We also approved the final plat it's called Walnut Hill Subdivision. So the property is 601 South Main. 601
South Main.
So if you're driving on South Main, it's on the east side of the road, and it's kind of an old, maybe Victorian-style home that has a relatively big lot. So the subdivision includes carving out a small lot on the north side that would be accessible from Burlington, and a lot on the east side that's actually accessible from Tyler, I believe. Forgetting exactly. It's a street that currently dead ends back there, but they're going to extend it to gain access to this other property. So the developer came to council 2 meetings ago to talk about this, but so did a lot of neighbors, especially the ones to the east. They say that the water, when it rains, just runs off that property and floods their whole area.
Mm-hmm.
So my fellow council members and myself asked, can you include a stormwater mitigation plan? Because the developer talked that he would do that, but could you put it in writing that you're going to do one? So he did, and it suited the council's need. He talked about a water retention rain garden and building berms and all these extra features to keep the stormwater from just flowing off into the neighbors' yards and basements. So I think you're going to hear a lot more about stormwater management in the coming years. It seems like there are a lot of places in town where it's an issue.
Well, some old issues probably that have been around for a while, but interesting to see so much development suddenly. That's been kind of hasn't been happening for a while.
It's true. I mean, we have seen a bit of an uptake, not a lot.
Yeah,
but,
no, just it's not overwhelming, but it's
there.
Yeah,
something.
right.
There's something.
By the way,
more houses are good.
That's Michael Halley. This is James Moore. You're listening to City Business, solar-powered KRUU-FM, 100.1 FM on your radio dial, KRUU-FM.com, the World Wide Web machine, also Fairfield Media Center in the house, and we're going to continue. I see the ledger, I believe I saw it there, the 13% increase in property tax assessment and 18% for commercial. Mm-hmm. That's a big chunk for commercial.
Yeah, so that was the state
and that's the state, of course. Mm-hmm. But
it's done whenever an area has an ongoing differential between assessed values and actual prices.
We did talk about this, I think, last time. It's not just so people know. That's not something the city's doing.
Yeah, city actually lowered our levy this fiscal year, so that increase didn't come from the city; it's from the state.
Again, just you can feel the pain for anybody. Almost 20%.
I know
is a chunk, and commercial property is.
Yep.
I guess that's part of the thing everybody rolls with. 13% is not a small bit of change for homeowners either.
But yeah, it's interesting because commercial manufacturing got a break from the state in the last few years, and cities are going to get hit hard because they'll have less revenue from that.
Right.
And so the state has been what they call backfilling by providing other funding, but that, of course, will end at some point. So overall, the sales or the property tax revenue will be less from that area, not residential, but commercial. All right, these next things, I'm going to basically tell you what they are because it's incredibly boring, but
okay,
we had to essentially redo, as a technical term, a bunch of contracts for phase 1 of this wastewater upgrades because the USDA grant required slightly different wording than the grants the loan we were going to get through state revolving funds. So
I'm just going to throw in there, anybody who's done grants understands about wording of grants because they all have something built in, which I guess you can understand. It's why they're providing loans for specific things, but I'm just saying that's
So we did this last meeting. We did it again, canceled old agreements and accepted new ones. And these were things from 2 years ago that we had agreed, engineering services and the like. Mm-hmm. Oh, this one's interesting. So the city had to acquire some properties adjacent to the wastewater plant in order for our expansion. And there's a house on one property that the city was going to use for firefighter training, police training, and then tear down. But a couple of interested buyers have come and said, we'd like to buy that property and move it. And so we voted to give our city administrator authority to take sealed bids for the home and set a date, March 30th, that they have to have it moved by then because that's when the project will begin in earnest. But it's a little unexpected income for something. It's nice when you think that something isn't worth anything, but actually to someone else it is. So great.
Well, you know what they say, one man's ceiling is another man's floor.
Exactly. All right. So a couple of projects I was involved with. City of Fairfield participated in the Iowa Living Roadways Community Visioning Program, which is free to communities under 10,000. And essentially they poll and survey and work with communities to find out basically any barriers to transportation. Could be pedestrian, could be cycling, could be motorists, but any transportation issues in the community. And then the program pays for designs of projects to remedy or attempt to remedy some of these issues. And one issue was that our north entrance into town on Highway 1, that traffic goes pretty fast there between the two parts of the university. University is on both sides of Highway 1, so you have a lot of pedestrians crossing. But the DOT does not want to lower speed limits. They found that artificially lowering speed limits actually causes more potential crashes. What they do is they do a speed study, measure speeds over a period of time, and then they set the speed limit to match the average speed. So they requested MUM to adopt some traffic calming measures, which never ended up happening. But this program we were part of created a vision. On the university side of the street, east side of the street, they talk about extending a sidewalk, maybe some street lights, and some street trees. Now, we can't do that, the city, because that's private property, except maybe we can help with the sidewalk at some point. But for now, a grant came that would pay for tree planting. So on the west side, which is a public right-of-way, we're looking to put in street trees along there.
Wow.
Now, there's already wooded area,
Mm-hmm.
but street trees, because the way they're planted and they're more obviously intentionally put there, have that psychological effect of telling drivers that they are entering town, that they're not in the country anymore, that
Wow.
they're in an urban setting, and apparently can have a traffic calming effect.
I'll be darned.
Who knew? So
It makes sense, though, when you think about it.
yeah. So the city had to pass a resolution in order for us to get the grant. So I'll let you know if we get the grant. I'm hoping we do.
Is it Trees Forever?
Yep. Trees Forever
Cool.
administering. Actually, I think it's state
wonderful
or
group.
federal funds.
Wonderful
So,
group of
Yeah.
folks.
You gotta love Trees Forever. The city adopted the home-based Iowa policy. This is the policy that is supportive of vets, military vets who are looking to relocate outside of Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be for our community, Fairfield. Jefferson County passed a resolution. We passed a resolution, but added an incentive, and it's a free 1-year membership to the indoor gym and indoor pool.
Cool.
Recreation center. We thought that would be a nice little incentive. Now that both city and county governments are on board, Adam Plaguey from FEDA, Ray Chambers from the Veterans Affairs Office, and myself will start soliciting local businesses to offer incentives. And once we get a number of them, we'll become an official home-based Iowa community. We'll be on their website. So if I was a vet living somewhere other than Iowa and I was looking at different communities, that we would come up and all of the incentives would be there. And
Awesome.
I know Troy Van Beek from Ideal Energy is very keen.
That's
He wants
right.
to see this happen. He's a
Veteran.
vet. Yep. Yeah, he's hired a number of vets, and I think he'd be very interested. What else? Oh, the alcohol server training. I should definitely get this out there because we
Okay.
read the first of 3 readings, and anybody who is in the business of serving alcohol should be aware of this.
And there seem to be more and more.
Yeah, well, again, when I read those are renewals, but there are some new ones over time. Up until now, the state hasn't mandated alcohol training for businesses that have people serving alcohol, but they do have fines for companies, businesses that get caught during a raid or a bust or whatever selling to minors, and those are very harsh. So the city decided that we would do, this is in conjunction with the social host ordinance that we passed a while back, the county passed, that makes the adults who host parties where minors are drinking responsible.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as that was passed, you saw an amazing decrease in those parties because no adult wanted to be held liable. So this sets that each business will have their employees who serve alcohol trained once a year, and there's a free training. so it's no cost to them. And if now we're not going to go around checking them, but when the police do their, whatever you want to call them, their raids, not their raids, but their stings. Yeah,
whatever.
That's actually probably right. When they come in and they test them, if they fail and they're found that they haven't kept their training up, $100 fine. If they get caught twice, $200 fine. 3 times, $300 fine, and goes up to $400. So it's enough to be an incentive, but it's not as bad as with the state. So we're essentially buffering our local businesses from how bad it could be if the state decided to prosecute and use their laws, which it's like the second time they take away your license for 30 days. The third time they take it away.
Period.
For a long time. I think, maybe forever. So it's very harsh on the state level. So,
but are you saying there is state mandated training or not?
There is not.
There's not. So they haven't ever set that as a
no. But
rule.
The state has this interesting policy that if a business gets caught in a sting to selling to minors, and they can prove they had training, they sometimes don't get in trouble that first time. They can sometimes get a pass because they had training. Now, it wasn't in our ordinance because it's a state policy and we can't really refer to it, but by having the training, they have that buffer. It's not guaranteed, but it can protect them from fines for up to 4 years of having that training. So remember when Ragbri came through, Tammy Jones headed up the beverage garden, and she had everyone in there go to the training. CETA has been doing the training for years. And last year, 2014, 4 people went for the whole year. 4 people of the whole town. So it's completely unutilized because, people just don't want to have to do something they don't want to have to do.
Yeah.
I'm not in favor of forcing people to do things. I'm not sure about, I have philosophical issues with trying to govern morality, but the law is that you have to be a certain age, 21 and over, to drink alcohol. And if people don't know how to card properly, then you're going to get more fake IDs getting through, or people just never asking. So it's free training. We figure that makes it a little bit easier. But if anyone's listening, is
it held once a year or once in a while, or how does that work? Do you even know?
I think CETA does it more than once a year.
Okay,
or is willing to. I'm sure if they have more people come, they'd be willing to do it more often.
It's a CETA thing.
Yeah. So the city will offer the information. The way the ordinance is worded, it's whatever free training the police chief designates. So currently at CETA, say that CETA stops doing it, it could be an online training.
I see.
There's other free training out there.
Gotcha.
But we just want to make sure everyone knows how to properly check for IDs.
Very good.
Let's see, the mayor's report. I know he talked about our 4th Street Railroad crossing, so I'm not sure when people will be hearing this. If they're hearing it later in the week, maybe it's open again. But we just really wanted to thank BNSF. Yeah, all they have to do is move one of the gates a little bit. We just wanted to thank the railroad crew who did such a great job. So Ed wants to have a ribbon cutting when it opens.
Cool.
So keep your eyes open for
that. Is that set yet or not?
No, because we're waiting to hear from the foreman when they're done. I don't know if the derailment over east on the same line would slow down the process, if the crews got pulled away to deal with that, or I haven't heard. But as you can hear now, the trains are back up. But I'm glad that there were no fatalities in that. That was really scary situation.
Any oil involved?
Coal trains.
Because coal is better than the alternative. We do have flammable.
Oh, if it was oil,
flammable stuff going
exactly
50 feet from our house. So it's always a little bit one of those.
It's a little bit questionable.
Concerns.
You don't want to ever see a derailment, but could have been a lot worse. Let's see. Then Water and Sewer Utilities gave a report, but there wasn't really anything amazing about it. I'm thinking they want to talk about Alliant Energy wants to have an agreement with the city about replacing street lights, so that's going to actually pass over to the environmental and franchise utility, because that's a franchise issue.
Okay. And
I'm going to say this. We went into closed session. I can't talk about what we do in closed session, but I can talk about, in general, what sometimes we do in closed session. And I'm just going to say this because I need to vent. So you're going to let me vent just a little bit.
You have 1 minute.
Okay. There are people.
Jason?
There are some people in the world who, when a government entity needs to, remember we talked about those easements,
Mm-hmm.
they take advantage of it, and they want to get the best deal they can get. What I think is forgotten is that the government you don't want to stick it to the government, especially local government, because all you're doing is sticking it to the taxpayers. So by trying to milk the project and hold up a project and hold the whole thing up, until, I got to get the best possible deal I can for this, maybe in some cases, very small easement on my property. I just, I can't respect that. And we've had to deal with that since I've been on the council many times.
Mm.
People during these negotiations just asking for ridiculous things, and you'd be surprised what they end up getting sometimes, because the alternative is going to the court system, which can be lengthy and expensive in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And if anyone's listening, and if this ever happens where you're asked to give an easement, I hope in your heart you'll realize it's just, we're all part of this, and any increase in whatever you get, that's taxpayers paying for that. In this case, it's wastewater users. All of us are paying, and over time, it's probably something we would never feel, but just the principle of it. And so, I get a little irked when we go through this.
Well, that's brought to you by the Michael Halley Venting
Association. You can join my club anytime. I'll vent to you. No, I usually don't, but I just got a little frustrated last night. So.
Yeah. Well,
it happens. I'm a human being.
Yeah, well, I think of striking a balance, and I think the word strike sometimes is more predominant than balance, because getting to the balance point. Yeah, I joke about, we have a war on everything: poverty, terror, drugs. We need a war on balance. But
interesting wording. War on poverty. It doesn't make any sense.
But seriously, no. Just that thing about figuring out people have a right to push and pull, and negotiations are what they are. And
you want to stick it to the man, but it's the public man, which is everyone. It's you kind of sticking it to everyone.
Well, hopefully. And on that note, this is City Business with James Moore. Hopefully we'll continue with the common good and the public. A story for another time, ladies and gentlemen. This is James Moore with Michael Halley. Michael, thanks so much for coming in.
You're welcome.
And sharing city news. Jason, we'll have you hooked up in no time here. Siesta Ocha. See you in 2 weeks.